Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth opens by posing a question. And though it's a simple question, like so many great stories, it's how the question is answered, rather than the answer itself, that makes you glad you asked. That said, it may be hard at times to believe that Code Realize holds much potential. As an otome romance tale that casts historical and fictional characters as your love interests, wrapped in an alternate 19th century steampunk aesthetic, it's easy to be disparaging. Nevertheless, this simplicity is often the thing that allows players to more fully appreciate the elements that transform Code Realize into something far more remarkable. The capabilities of Code Realize are immediately evident during its promising introduction. Along with the propensity to be many things to many people, by transitioning seamlessly between levity, sobriety, horror and action, what's just as apparent to new players is the particular way it tells its story. On the whole, Code Realize animates its interactions fairly typically, presenting its characters on screen with detail and energy. However, it also chooses to depict its protagonist in an ancillary manner alongside its text in a slightly removed perspective. This decision has far-reaching consequences. Briefly, it's worth prefacing the praise with some negatives. The character icon, as it's known, may seem irritating initially, not meshing well with characters on screen, and though there is an option to turn it off, its absence makes it a little more difficult to discern between thought and dialogue, and contributes to what feels like a waste of space on screen. Aside from this adjustment period, the character icon is a subtle and brilliant addition indeed, permitting smooth transition between players being placed in a first or third person perspective, thus allowing a particular tone to prosper more fully. The easiest means to explain this is through its standout action scenes. First, Code Realize cleverly anchors the player with introspection or soliloquy, placing the player inside the head of the protagonist and from here initiating its action. Thus, such scenes needn't be visually expansive. In depicting a car crash, the developers don't animate fully and expressly what happens. Instead, players experience it from the protagonist's perspective, putting the player there themselves. Players hear and feel more than they see, so a sudden shudder, a loud screech and jolt of your view is just as effective as more explicit portrayal. When this philosophy is combined with strong musical motif, the clash of characters with strength and agency, and very subtle manipulation of environments and backgrounds to alter perspective slightly, Code Realize presents some of the most accomplished action in the genre. The character icon has positive effects elsewhere too. When it comes to horror or mystery, placing the player in first person can heighten the mystery by legitimizing the character's concern or isolating them to accentuate the horror. This isn't the only way it affects the telling of our tale. Conversely, placing Cardia on screen has a positive effect on less serious scenes too, reinforcing the player's initial reaction in humorous situations when witnessing the response of the protagonist to more ludicrous characters and situations. Further still, it allows you to have more multi-layered interactions, so our protagonist can still be brooding about her father despite the tonal change that the audio design may suggest. The result of this is quite subtle indeed, contributing a far more nuanced emotional progression to many scenes. Though this particular design quirk is important to what makes Code Realize really stand out, it would be nothing without a strong foundation. Code Realize's ensemble cast lends a large degree of intrigue to the proceedings, each deuteragonist with enough ability to make conflict all the more dramatic and consequential. Though the protagonist may seem a little bland, the character works well as a foil to the eccentricity and madness around her, and the formality of the setting and tone adds a rather hilarious circumlocution to the witty banter. Furthermore, the core secrets of Code Realize are still expanded and developed with twists, turns, and characters with uncertain intentions. With great mystery, how crucial information is revealed is always paramount. First, the player must be told why the question matters and is worth answering, supporting it along the way with anything from oddity, novelty, or humour. Then, players must earn the answer. Often, it's not a complex answer, but players must feel like they have earned the answer and have grown because of it. Code Realize demonstrates that it understands these rules fully, reeling in players again and again until they're firmly rooted in its outcome. Code Realize is not flawless. The hands-off approach it uses elsewhere can sometimes be to its detriment. There is not much variety to its environments, only showing very limited backgrounds of areas. And in the same vein, very few other ancillary characters are animated. Thus, when you've spent some time searching for clues to an enigmatic illness with a doctor that's never actually depicted, it's hard not to be disappointed. These problems make the alternate world of Code Realize a little less fleshed out, such that the story can at times hinge only on the intrigue generated by the plot itself, rather than any desire to learn more about the world. Further still, though the choice to have the protagonist non-voiced allows for flexibility in its storytelling process, there are certainly some scenes that are stymied by a need for introspection when sudden exclamation or more straightforward reaction would suit better. On a final note, from a technical perspective, there exist minor audio balance problems throughout, but on the whole, Code Realize runs smoothly and proficiently. There are times when the overly romantic tone of Code Realize may become too strong for some. These instances are rare, but it's an issue that ties into what is the final hurdle that the story faces, one that is far more subjective than many of its others: the modest substance of the tale itself. Nevertheless, Code Realize never claims to be anything more, and it's difficult to be too critical because of this. Code Realize is a proficiently told romance with few flaws that treats intimacy as well as action, horror, and mystery, and is another welcome addition to the library of a great handheld.